When Yunha's sister heard this, she was surprised and excited. Whereas Yunha was thinking something else, Grandma here referred to his maternal grandmother, as his father was an orphan, so the only grandmother he had was from his mother's side. In his previous life, after his parents passed away, he grew up with his maternal grandmother. When all of his emotions died out, and he was living like a lifeless human, his grandmother was the only one who took care of him until the day she died. His father's happy voice then brings him out of his thoughts. Yunha's father then says that earlier they couldn't visit Grandma because the outskirts of Seoul were much dangerous, but this time it would be much safer as the government would be maintaining the roads. All of a sudden, Yunha spoke in a serious tone and asked him if they could go see Grandma some other time. His father and mother were both surprised to see him act this way. Yunha's mother then smiles and persuades him that didn't he make a beautiful carnation to give it to her. Yunha, with his head down, says that even he wanted to go meet Grandma, but not on that date. Could they go on some other date? Yunha then thinks that even if he were to say the truth, his parents wouldn't believe him as he was a kid. So he decided to act like a kid and stop them from going that day. After that, Yunha's face emerges with a smile, and he says with an excited look that soon it would be Children's Day, and he wanted to go to an amusement park and also ride the Viking. Hearing all this, even his older sister was excited and tells that she would also like to go to the park. Yunha's father then mumbles, "Come to think of it, neither Yunha nor Yuna have been to the amusement park before." Yunha's mother then replies, it was because of the monsters that they avoided venturing out further. Yunha's father then sighs and says that they would go to the park tomorrow. His mother then says that she would be packing the lunch. Was there anything special they wanted to eat? Yunha's sister then raises her hand excitedly and says that she wanted sandwiches and chicken nuggets. Yunha was overjoyed because his plan worked. Even though he couldn't prevent the Kraken from coming out, at least he could prevent his family from running into it. This would definitely change the future. All of a sudden, Yunha had a bad feeling. At the same time, his mother's phone rang. When she picked up and answered it, she was terrified. She then says thanks to the person on the other side of the phone, and also says to take good care of her mother, after saying that she hung up. Seeing the flustered look on his wife's face, Yunha's father asks her if something happened to mother. Yunha's sister also asks if there is something wrong. Yunha's mother says with a shaking voice that her mother just collapsed. Hearing all this, Yunha grits his teeth and thinks that this was impossible. Nothing like this happened in his previous life. Yunha's mother says in a heavy tone that even though her mother was not seriously injured, but she still wanted to go see her. Yunha's father, seeing his wife in pain, says that he would also come with her, as he was worried about mother too. But the woman then asks, what about kids? Yunha's father then says in a wistful tone that they won't be able to go to the amusement park at a time like this. As soon as the roads were ready, they would leave tomorrow. Yunha's mother then smiles and consoles Yunha, saying that Grandma wasn't feeling well, so could they go to the park some other time. Yunha was in a dilemma, because he tried to change the future. His grandma was injured. If he tries to change anything further, something really bad might happen. He couldn't stop his family from running into the Kraken. Though why did he return? This wasn't any different from before. But then he consoles himself, saying that there is a difference. It is him. He was different from before. He had been storing mana since he was younger, and also had battle experience from before his return. If he couldn't stop his family from running into the Kraken, then he would battle it instead. Yunha then slowly says with a dull expression, "Let's go see Grandma." The Mana Management Bureau classified all monsters into the following categories based on the level of threat they presented against world peace. Rank 9 monsters pollute the environment or cause epidemics. Rank 8 monsters that pose physical threat to one's life. Rank 7 monsters that commit mid-level crimes such as robbery and murder. Rank 6 monsters that cause administrative paralysis within the city, either individually or by forming groups, or break into human territory. Rank 5 monsters that cause administrative paralysis within the city, either individually or by forming groups, or have equivalent threatening force. Rank 4 monsters that manage herds of other monsters, domesticate humans, or threaten the prosperity of humans. Rank 3 monsters are those that cause administrative paralysis at government level as a single entity and cause harm equivalent to a disaster. Rank 2 monsters are those that cause administrative paralysis at government level as a single entity and cause harm equivalent to a catastrophe. Finally, the Rank 1 monsters, which are a threat to the existence of humanity as a single entity. Krakens were Rank 3 monsters. Before he returned, around the time he was graduating the academy, they were demoted to Rank 4 due to the increasing efficiency of the players. But the players currently stationed at the event were only C to E ranks. They were not at a level that could defeat the Kraken. Yunha then thought that even he couldn't defeat the Kraken in his current situation. But there was only one thing he could do. Until the 12 thrones show up to defeat the Kraken, he had to buy as much time as possible. One day had passed and Yunha had completed his preparation. The only weapons a child like him could have were scissors and a utility knife. He wanted to bring the kitchen knife as well, but if it went missing, his mother might notice. Even with those flimsy weapons, if he coated them with mana, they might damage the Kraken to some extent. Suddenly, he hears the sound of door opening, and his cheerful elder sister asks him if he was ready. As they were about to leave now, Yuna turns towards his sister, then smiles and says that he had packed all the things. He was ready. The roads were jammed due to heavy traffic, as many people chose this road for safety. Yuna's sister had fallen asleep during the journey. Yuna's mother then asks Yuna to sleep if he is feeling tired. But Yuna replies that he was fine. Yuna was thinking that in his previous life the Kraken appeared when they were in the middle of crossing the Seongsan Bridge. They were already halfway across the bridge, but the Kraken had still not appeared. Perhaps something else might have also changed in the future. Yuna wished to at least let them cross the bridge safely. All of a sudden there was a huge explosion. The impact of it was so high that the bridge broke. At this moment, Yuna realized that fate cannot be changed. As if it were laughing at his desperate wish, it finally showed itself. The Rank 3 disaster class monster, the Kraken. The Kraken was destroying everything in its path. Cars were smashed, people were crushed, and the bridge was falling apart. Some desperate people were calling for the players, and seeing them coming, they finally sighed. The captain of the group of players charged towards the Kraken, but all it needed was just a little moment, and the captain of this group of players was crushed. The other members of his team were terrified and started running in the opposite direction of the Kraken. Maybe they realized that they were like an ant in front of this colossal entity. The common people seeing this were very angry and cursed the players. Yuna's family sat there terrified by the screams and the scene in front of them. Yuna's father with a trembling voice tells them that they should get out too. If they move carefully, then they would be able to evacuate safely. Even though he was saying all this, his petrified eyes said otherwise. Yuna's sister was scared and grabbed Yuna's arm tightly. Yuna's mom then says they should trust their dad and everything would be all right. So they should get out of the car calmly. They then slowly get out of the car. As soon as Yuna's sister gets out of the car and sees the situation outside, she was petrified and fell down. Her legs gave up. Even though she tried to get up, she couldn't. Her eyes were covered with droplets of tears. She tried hard to get up and start walking, but seeing all the slaughter and chaos for the first time, she was scared to even get up. Yuna's father sees all this and realized that if he as an adult was scared, then he couldn't even imagine what his daughter was going through. Yuna's father then calmly consoles her, saying that he would carry her. Suddenly he thought of something and looked towards Yuna, only to be shocked as Yuna was calm. He then asks him if he could walk and Yuna replies with a yes. Then they hear the sound of players who were evacuating the people. As they ran in the direction the players showed, Yuna was pondering that even though a rank 3 monster, a Kraken, appeared, and the players are panicking, the veteran players had quickly assessed the situation and were focused on evacuating the people. However, the Kraken wasn't the only issue. They needed to get off the bridge before they appeared. Before Yuna could think further, the player who was guiding them earlier was suddenly pierced by a spear. Seeing this, his whole family was shocked. Yuna gritted his teeth because they were here, the rank 7 monsters, the divers. They then start attacking the players, who were guiding the common people. Thus, the players evacuating the people were engaged in a battle with the divers. There was chaos everywhere. Yuna's father then tells them not to worry, as he would protect them no matter what. So he says not to look back and just run. The Kraken was in a frenzy. It grabbed many vehicles and threw it towards the running people. Yuna suddenly shouts and tells his father that it was dangerous and they should stop. It seems that luck was at their side, as in front of them was a massive explosion. Yuna's family stood there with a helpless expression. The players were moving here and there and were frustrated because the backup had not yet arrived. Yuna eavesdropped in the conversation of some players who were sighing within themselves and were waiting for the backup. Yuna remembered that before he regressed, the 12 thrones had arrived at the scene 30 minutes after the Kraken appeared. Could the players really defend till the support arrives? They could do some damage to the divers, but they couldn't do anything to the Kraken. If someone doesn't divert the Kraken till the support arrives, everyone here would die. Yuna sighs. This was something he had been preparing since the beginning. Even if he had to put his life on the line, he was going to protect his family. Yuna takes out the paper cutter from his backpack. Seeing this, his mother was surprised, but before she could say anything, Yuna calmly tells them to not move from here until the backup arrives. His father was flustered and asked in a trembling voice, what was he going to do? Yuna replies with a determined look, the players will block the small monsters, the divers, from them. But even if something dangerous were to happen, Yuna was here to protect them. Yuna then thinks that, if he leaves, then the only person here who knew how to handle Manhwa was his sister. Yuna tells his sister that she could do it. After saying that, he runs away in the direction of the Kraken. Yuna's sister shouts his name with tears in her eyes. Yuna was fast and he soon reached near the Kraken. He then spreads Manhwa on his feet and uses a technique from his previous life, heavenly steps. His speed instantly increases as he dashes forward with double the speed. This mobility skill, which he was using the first time in this life, was too much for a 6-year-old's body to bear. But he had to use this as he wanted to get to the Kraken in an instant. The players, the people, and almost everyone was shocked seeing a kid jump from car to car and move towards the Kraken at a terrifying speed. Even though the divers didn't have much intelligence, they could still detect threat from the boy and move to stop him. Yuna, seeing the divers in front of him, coats his paper knife blade with Manhwa and slashes it towards the divers. The divers were being cut like paper. Yuna continued cutting them as he moved forward. But the waves of monsters was never ending. He suddenly spots a stronger monster, who had now targeted him. Yuna dodges the blow towards him, and then subconsciously attacks it. Yuna realized that slowly he was getting his past fighting senses back. This was the feeling he got when he killed the monsters in his previous life, and he was soon going to become the previous undead. All of a sudden, a terrifying amount of murderous energy spreads out of him, and he becomes emotionless and starts killing the monsters in his way. Manhwa blades danced around him and the monsters fell one by one. No matter how much he killed, more and more monsters were coming. Time passed, and he had eliminated more than 30 monsters. Unfortunately, his paper knife broke. Yuna threw it away and took out his scissors, which he had separated to make 2 blades. At last he had finally reached near the Kraken. He coats the scissor blades with Manhwa and jumps towards the Kraken. He runs on the Kraken's tentacle and slides the blades pierced on his face. Yuna applied much pressure and the Kraken was spewing out purple blood. The Kraken detected Yuna, and a tentacle came smashing towards him with high speed. Yuna dodged it by jumping off the Kraken. He lands on the ground with a frown because one of the scissor blade couldn't be used anymore. He then threw it away and focused all his mana on the remaining one scissor blade. He ran towards the Kraken and was aiming to pierce one of its eyes, but one of the tentacle collided with him in midair, and he was sent flying back to the ground. That earlier attack was wasted and Yunha was almost out of mana. The Kraken smashes one of the pillar on which the bridge was standing, and Yunha almost fell down. He hurriedly escapes the broken bridge area and lands on a rather safe area. But the Kraken was very angry and threw a truck at him. The smashed truck was now coming at high speed. Yunha charges all of his remaining mana in the scissor blade, and this creates a huge mana blade. This mana blade swiftly cuts the incoming truck in two like a tofu. Even though Yunha saved himself from this, his mana was now completely empty. Because he overstrained all his mana, he couldn't move his body and fell down. His eyes were open, and in front of him lied the scissor blade, but he couldn't even lift his finger, let alone hand. He was slowly losing consciousness. He then tells himself that if he lost consciousness here then, all that he worked up for would be for nothing. As his eyelids were slowly closing, he smashed his hand on the ground, with all the remaining power he had. The pain was tremendous, and this prevented him from losing consciousness. He couldn't end it like this. He wanted to live. He also wanted a happy family. As he was trying to get up, the Kraken's huge tentacle was coming directly towards him. Even though Yunha tried to keep his consciousness, he couldn't do anything else. At that moment, the phenomenon called miracle occurred. A girl came running and hugged Yunha from behind. That girl was Yunha's older sister. She shouted not to hurt his brother, and a tremendous golden pillar of pure mana enveloped them. The power then expanded and destroyed the incoming Kraken's tentacle. The golden pillar of mana didn't stop expanding as it continued to envelop the divers, and directly caused them to dissipate in thin air. The pillar was so bright that it was visible to everyone. Yunha was shocked and thought that it was impossible, because this thing in front of him was the phenomenon called miracle. Miracle was a gift that could reconstruct the world by changing the laws of the world. Before his regression, Yunha knew of 4 people who possessed the gift miracle, and the only one whom he could entrust his back to was his partner Liu Zhong, and she was also the one who sent him back in time. When Yunha first saw the tremendous mana from his sister, he thought that what if she also possessed the gift miracle? His older sister comforts him, saying it was fine now, and hugs him. Yunha's injuries were healing at a rapid speed. Not only that, but the golden light was protecting them from the Kraken. Suddenly, Yunha becomes alarmed, because there's a cost to using miracle. Those who possess miracle have to pay a huge cost to reconstruct the world. Yunha hurriedly asked his sister if she was okay. Did it hurt anywhere? His sister then smiles and says that she was fine, but she was feeling sleepy. She couldn't complete her sentence as she lost consciousness in Yunha's embrace. As Yunha could feel and see mana, he clearly felt that his sister had only the tiniest amount of mana left, just to let her heart beating, except that he used all of it to protect Yunha. But Yunha was also happy as his sister showed no signs of side effects, except for mana exhaustion. Yunha gently places his sister on the ground and says to sleep well and leave everything to him, as he was going to take care of it. Yunha was now overflowing with mana, and so he released terrifying amount of mana. Seeing this, the Kraken opened its eyes with an astonished look, and for the first time felt a threat, but it was not from Yunha, instead the girl beside her. Yunha smirked and said, "So finally you opened your eyes. Did you identify my sister as an enemy?" The Kraken wanted to eliminate the threat directly, so he attacked with one of his tentacles towards the unconscious girl. But in front of her stood his brother, who stopped the tentacle with his mana. Yunha replies coldly to the Kraken that it wouldn't be able to touch her at all. The mana compressed and the Kraken's tentacle burst like a balloon. That's all for this video. If you want something interesting like this, then subscribe.